Okay. Hello and welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining today's InfoReady Peer Spotlight webinar. I'm your host, Carlos Moncada, Senior Director of Client Success. We have a great discussion today with three great panelists who will be sharing how internal funding and limited submissions are managed at their respective institutions. Now, before we do introductions, we have some housekeeping items to cover. So on the next screen, there's some information I'd like to share with you. Before I get into this information, I do want to let everyone know that this webinar is being recorded. We always get that question, so I want everyone to know webinar is being recorded. We're going to share it. And so on screen here, you see a little bit of information about InfoReady. So InfoReady is a centralized platform that helps you manage all parts of your selection and approval processes, be they competitive process or maybe just standard approval processes. So there you can create the opportunities, share those opportunities with people on your campus or even external folks, collect the applications and submissions, review them, track them, make the decisions in the platform, collect follow-up reporting, annual reporting, and then you can even use that data to report up your organization. It's a really flexible tool. You'll hear different types of uses here in this discussion today. On the next screen, you're going to see a whole slew of different types of use cases. And they're happening all over campus. All different types of processes managed all over campus. The conversation today is focusing on research offices. And so I'll give you a second to look over this. We can also share this with you if you're interested. So you have a little bit more time to digest it. On the next screen, we'll be able to get to our main attraction today. So we're here, we're talking research, and I'm honored to be speaking with our panels today. I'm going to introduce them from left to right on the slide. Please ignore my headshot. I think it should be deleted from existence. Ignore that terrible haircut. So enough about me. Althea Sheets, you see there on the left. Althea is the Associate Director of Research Engagement in the Division of Research at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. Her weather is much warmer than mine in Ann Arbor. She builds engagement and communication strategies that connect faculty with funding opportunities and research resources, oversees internal award programs, and leads professional development and proposal development and research communication. She brings more than 20 years of experience in communications and research development in higher education. Welcome, Althea. And then next on your screen is Sydney Bollinger. So Sydney has an MS and is the pilot program element program coordinator for the South Carolina Clinical and Translational Research Institute at the Medical University of South Carolina. In her role, she manages a portfolio of seed funding grants focused on the translational research and translational science, as well as manages MUSC's contract with InfoReady and serves as the main point of contact for the system on her campus. And then last one, Eleanor Nelson. Eleanor is Senior Research Development Coordinator in the Virginia Tech Office of Research and Innovation. Eleanor assists with the coordination and preparation of large collaborative research proposals, develops and curates resources to support proposal development, and manages other initiatives designed to maximize faculty success in securing research funding. Before joining the Office of Research and Innovation, Nelson was the Director of Strategic Development at the Virginia Tech Institute for Critical Technology and Applied Science, a role she assumed after 8 years as the Institute's Director of Communications. Nelson earned a doctorate in chemistry from the University of Wisconsin-Madison and a bachelor's degree from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. So welcome to all our panelists today. Really happy to have them here. And now we're going to get into this panel discussion. So the first thing, we're going to set the table. We're going to create the context. I'm going to ask all of the panelists to share a little bit more about their responsibilities at their institution and also tell us a little bit more about how they're using InfoReady. So we're going to start with the original order. Althea, tell us a little bit more about what you're doing on campus with InfoReady, maybe what your office is using InfoReady for.
Okay, perfect. Good morning, everyone. So we've been using InfoReady for a little over 2 years. We use it for internal faculty awards, seed grants, and limited submissions. We use all the features from application submission, review, automated notifications, and progress reports. We use both the letters of intent and competitions. We've built strong templates in Form Designer, and that has really streamlined our setup process. Progress reporting, super helpful. We collect interim, final, and 3 years of post-award data in our seed grants. So tracking things like publications, grants, collaborators, patents, along with narrative impacts. This allows us to calculate annual and cumulative return on investment, as well as strong reports. We are planning to scale InfoReady campus-wide this year. So far, it's just been in the Division of Research, but we're going to branch out. I'll be leading training for all new admins and developing standard operating procedures for across campus. I'm the main InfoReady point of contact. We just have two super admins, myself and Hebron Chavez Godino. He has taken the lead on limited submissions this last year, which I used to do them before. Limited submissions are just about 25% of his position. Our focus is on limited submissions that meet our university's strategic initiatives rather than the quantity of limited submissions that we're announcing, since we don't have a full-time person dedicated to just limited submissions. And that's what we do.
Thanks so much for that summary, Althea. It's helpful to know where you're coming from, what UNLV is doing on campus. Next, Sydney, same question to you.
Hi, everyone. Like I said, I'm Sydney. So as the pilot program coordinator for the Sector Institute, I do a lot of the behind the scenes work on our grant application. So I serve as an administrator for all of our InfoReady application portals for our pilot grant program. We have 3 different grant opportunities. We have a rolling grant and then 2 others that are one's in the spring and one's in the fall. And since we've started using InfoReady, it's been a lot easier to manage these competitions, especially because we have so many running at the same time. And we have a number of different administrators from different departments on campus. So groups in our Department of Psychology use it, the Global Health Group uses it, Community Engagement, and our Office of Research Development, among others, for pilot grants, limited submission opportunities, training and workforce development grants. And then we've also recently added our Hollings Cancer Center at MUSC hosts a lot of their opportunities through InfoReady. And so many of these groups will administer their own application portals, but I am kind of the point of contact. So if anyone needs help or needs to get assisted with setting up InfoReady, they come to me. And I think, like Althea, we have really heavily used Form Designer and built great templates for our groups to use to help get them started.
Thanks, Sydney. Eleanor, you tell us about what's going on at Virginia Tech.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Eleanor. We use InfoReady exclusively for our limited submissions process. We transitioned fully to InfoReady a little over a year ago. We'd previously had a platform that was built in-house, but it had been built a number of years ago and was getting a little obsolete and clunky and kind of difficult to manage. And so bringing our limited submissions on board through InfoReady has really helped us streamline that process a lot, and it makes the process of submitting NOIs and pre-proposals, I think, much more intuitive for faculty who are used to more modern platforms and interfaces. So we run both NOIs, LOIs, and competitions. We haven't used it for progress reports at this point, but we do have reviews for those competitions managed through InfoReady. And we use the notifications, of course, too, which has been super helpful to be able to notify the applicants and share their reviews with them at the same time. So yeah, that's how we use it.
So now we understand how everyone's using it on campus, and we can get into some questions. We had lots of questions submitted during registration, so we'll cover those here in this discussion, and we'll get into it now. Um, Eleanor, quick question: Are are you the point person for the other administrators at Virginia Tech too? Are they all coming to you?
Well, it's pretty much just me. There is one other person who helps out with limited submissions, but since we transitioned to this new system, I'm pretty much the only person handling it. She handles, I would say, like maybe 10% of the competitions. And when she does have questions, I definitely am the person to ask. But for the most part, it's just me. So yes, I manage all the administrators.
Okay, okay. Um, and so, uh, but for both Althea and Sydney, um, you're the main points of contact. You've been using InfoReady for a few years now. Could you tell us a little bit more how you manage that internally, being the main point of contact? I'm sure you field questions all the time and have to help train people up.
Yeah, I can start. So, because anyone on our campus, if they're interested in using InfoReady, they reach out to me. And often that means my first step is meeting with them and making sure that their use case fits with the system. Um, and if it does fit with their goals of having, usually this is for grant submissions, I'm the person who sets up a time to train them on the system and then usually provides them with the pre-created form designer templates. That includes some basic information that all grants require. And so I make sure to keep these up to date. Part of my role in this, though, is to kind of serve as like a support system for these folks. So I recently onboarded someone into the system, I think a couple of months ago, and their competition launched, I want to say a week ago. And while they were building the application portal, they often reached out to me to help them. And one of the great things about being I think the super administrator or global administrator of InfoReady was I'm able to go in and look at their competitions and help troubleshoot with them how to, you know, hey, I can't figure out how to change the notifications. Where do I go to do that? Or giving them suggestions on how I've used it since I've been in the system for, I think, almost 4.5 years now.
Time
Um,
flies.
yeah. So using my expertise to help them get started, and then also just being open to helping folks use the system if they need it. We really encourage it because it makes submitting grants so much easier, especially with having the opportunity to do LOIs, and the routing steps feature is just really helpful.
Great. Thanks so much, Sydney. And Althea, you mentioned that you're also the point of contact and you're training people up. So what are you doing to help folks on campus and help standardize things, right? Because this is one of the nice things about the platform. You're helping standardize processes.
So Sydney is far advanced in that compared to us. And so it's Abron and myself basically in the system. We have two other administrators that have done it. They're mostly internal awards so far. And so, but that's our goal this year is we're going to just launch it. And many of the things that Sydney mentioned, the training, the point of contact, helping set up their forms. I think setting up the form, the collection form is probably the hardest thing for them, and really understanding how they can use the notifications because that saves so much time. And so I might reach out to Sydney myself as we go campus wide and get some tips and tricks from her. So we're just small at this point, maybe just a slight bit more than Eleanor, but that's it.
Great. Well, everyone starts somewhere, right? It's a process. Um, and you got to keep moving forward for sure. Um, so I heard a couple things here that I think are beneficial for all groups that are using InfoReady. One, um, all three of you mentioned notifications and helping that with the communication process. Eleanor, yeah, you emphasized that at the top as well. Could you tell us a little bit more how you're using the notifications in the system to streamline the communication, reduce that chaos, get rid of stuff out of your inbox, all that?
Yeah, so we always I always customize the notifications when folks submit an NOI so that they know when the competition notification date is going to be. That's definitely helpful. We also customize the notification when we also customize the competition notification when we're letting them know that they'll need to submit a preliminary proposal. We don't put the guidelines for the pre-proposal in the notification itself, but I have started letting people know where in the interface to look for the instructions, because early on, as we were transitioning to the new system, folks weren't quite sure where to find those instructions. So we've customized the notification to say that. And I always make sure to let them know when the results notification date will be. And then finally, of course, we have the notifications for folks who've either their applications have been accepted and they can go on to submit a proposal to the sponsor, or if they weren't accepted this time around. And again, we include the information that you can submit a proposal to the sponsor. That's the one that we forward to our Office of Sponsored Programs so that they have that record of who's been approved to submit to that competition. That's really helpful for them. And because it's standardized, it makes it a little bit easier to search for that information, find it, rather than having to scroll through a whole bunch of random emails from me or from other people saying, oh, I have permission to do this. Um, and the thing that's really been most helpful is being able to automate the inclusion of the proposal reviews with the notification for the pre-proposals that have either been accepted or not accepted for submission. That used to be a process where I would manually go through all of the reviews that all of our reviewers sent me and pull out strengths and weaknesses and combine those into a single document for each proposer. That was not complicated, but administratively it was kind of a headache and took a surprising amount of time. And so being able to include those reviews directly in the notification email, and they're anonymized, and organized, that's really saved me a lot of time, and I think makes it a lot easier for the proposers also to skim through pretty quickly and see what did people, like or not like about their proposal.
Yeah, no, we've heard that for years. We've been hearing that getting the feedback from reviewers is really helpful. Both are people who are selected to advance and not selected, because you have that constructive feedback from your peers or subject matter experts that allows you to keep refining and improving on your research and your proposal writing and everything. So no, that's great to hear. That's been helpful. Um, I ha, for all three of you, communication breakdowns are huge, can be a huge time suck for everyone, and then it just creates confusion. Um, so are you the platform provides a lot of communication, uh, modes of communication. What kind of ways do you communicate with faculty and researchers outside of InfoReady? And what are they? Sydney, go ahead.
Yeah, so as far as I'm thinking, first of all, when we're advertising our competitions, we want people to apply to them. We really utilize a lot of our in-campus communication networks. So this includes things like newsletters, but also one of the best things that we found is direct outreach, person to person. Is to really the best way to spread the word about the grants that we're offering. And so we have some really great faculty who are the director of our pilot program, and they work to identify folks researchers who would be good fits for these grants and reach out to them directly. And so I think that really helps us gain more applicants. I know when I first started the program, we had maybe 6 applicants for one of our like general seed funding applications. And in the last cycle, we had almost 20. So really increasing these channels of communication makes a big difference and just spreading it far and wide. I mean, for us, we are a medical university, so most everyone who's a faculty is eligible to apply for all of our grants, and they're all like medical related or clinical research related. Um, but we really just try to focus on that person to person aspect, and then also reach out to all the different departments and things, and really try to personalize how people might connect to our opportunities.
Great. Yeah. You know, there's a reason why you're having these opportunities. They're not so you can party inside InfoReady. You're running up them for researchers on campus. Um, Althea, do you have any other ways that you communicate about opportunities, promote the opportunities on campus?
So we don't use the newsletter feature inside of InfoReady. We currently we're using Constant Contact, but and then we pull our own listserv, which is about like 4,700 people we send to. And so we are moving to Salesforce next week. And so that's going to integrate with Workday. So then we don't have to spend any of our time up keeping our listserv updated, which is going to take away so much of that, right? Like that's going to be so helpful. And so but we send a separate communication in something we call Research Weekly, and then we adapt that for limited submissions and send things out. And so faculty, we tend to have about a 70% read rate on that. So it seems to be working. And so that's how we communicate with them. Of course, if they send us an email and ask questions, but all of our communication about the pre-proposals or awards, all of that is done through InfoReady because we decided when we chose InfoReady that we were going to make this our official platform of record. And so therefore, if we were audited, everything has to be inside the system. So Habran and I, especially, we try very hard not to send too many emails outside of InfoReady so that, once we're gone or something happens, we get more admins, the information is still in there this is our official record. So that's what we do.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that. It's right. It's where everything starts, right? Getting people, making people aware of what's out there. So that's a big project you've got going on, switching to Salesforce and getting all those integrations set up. So I wanted to get into a little bit more on managing things in InfoReady. So one of the questions we received uh, during registration um, was asking for you to share your best practices for using letter of intent in InfoReady, right? We get people in into you promote the opportunities in InfoReady, so they come in, and for limited submissions especially, you might have a little letter of intent process. Can you tell us more about how you use that? Eleanor, haven't heard from you in a while.
Yeah, so we ask for very little information in our letter of intent process. So I do try to include all the details of the opportunity. I make sure that everything in the LOI form that it shows the entire process. So we have all the dates for when the internal notice of intent is due, when the pre-proposal is going to be due, when the competition notification date is, when the results notification date is, and then what the sponsor's deadline is. And then if the sponsor has a letter of intent date, then I let them know that. Also, that's all listed in that date section, so they can see at a glance not only when do I have to submit this notice of intent, but also what does my timeline look like after that if I end up submitting a proposal. So we just try to be as transparent as possible up front in terms of not only the details of the opportunity, but also what the timeline, what the calendar looks like there. And then as far as what we're asking for at the notice of intent stage, it's very minimal. All we ask folks for is their name, their email address, their primary affiliation, which is set up automatically for us in InfoReady, which is really nice. There's a integrated, drop down of what college, what department are you from, and so people can just select that, which is great and standardizes it and helps with the data management on the back end, certainly. And then we just ask for a tentative title of their project. And and the names of any collaborators. And we don't ask for anything else until we get to the pre-proposal stage. So it's a pretty streamlined process at the NOI stage for us.
Right. If it's an important step, right? Trying to get those hand raisers in there to know what's coming. Althea, can you tell us a little bit more about your letter of intent process and phase?
So ours is very similar to Eleanor's. We also have a very short letter of intent with exactly the same fields that she's using. And then, if we get more than the sponsor allows, then we convert it into a competition inside of InfoReady. And then from there, then we ask for a 4-page pre-proposal. And then that's a couple weeks we give them to do that. And then we send it out to the review committee. That's a panel of peer reviewers, and that we give them a couple weeks. And the hope is that we at least give them a month to write their proposals, once it gets through all of our process. But and we do use the letter of intent into the competition also we have a President's Interdisciplinary Research Accelerator Award. And so we've adapted that. They put in a concept paper at the letter of intent stage, and then those that are chosen to present at the symposium, then when that converts, then they actually put their PowerPoint presentation in. So that's just a little different use of the same system.
Right. Anything you try to avoid in that initial letter of intent?
Not really. Like we're trying to be as transparent as Eleanor, like how she said, we give them all the dates so they know upfront what's happening. And typically, I mean, we do have a few questions people will email you, but we don't overload them with information either. We try to make it so that people actually read what we're sending them.
Right. Less noise, fewer barriers for them to be able to submit a proposal.
Yeah, we used to ask them to submit a whole page at the letter of intent stage, but that was kind of redundant. Like if they're going to submit a 4-page proposal, if it goes to pre-proposal, like we just decided that was a waste of the faculty's time at that point of the stage for us.
Eleanor was nodding her head to that. So same thing going on at Virginia Tech. Sydney, do you use letter of intent for any of your internal funding opportunities?
Yeah, we do. So, one of our so I use it for a few opportunities, and I know there's some other of our administrators who use it. I think we have about like 25 administrators, so I'm not always up to date on what everyone's using it for. But in our case, often we use the letter of an intent, and we ask for some basic information, like Eleanor and Althea were saying, but we also ask for a 1-page concept proposal. And then we have a very short, like yes/no review process of these concept proposals to see which to move to the full application stage. So this is really important for us for one of our grants has some really specific requirements in a way like how the specific aims like topically what they need to be about. And so it allows us to review projects before we move to the full application stage. So that way we can make sure we're picking the ones that are actually going to respond well to our RFA. And so that makes it a lot easier for us, but then also we're not requiring full applications from folks who may not be in alignment with what we're asking for to begin with. And then we also recently had another competition it was state funded, and we used the same process. So we did concept proposals, and we ended up with about 50 concept proposals, but we were able to go through a yes/no on those one-pagers to then decide to narrow it down. So now we're only going to receive like 15 applications. So it really helps us on that end to see like, how can we streamline this process and make it easier for the reviewers on the other side.
Right, no, that's great insights there. We have to be considerate of our reviewers. So, and speaking of reviewers and review processes, I want to jump back to limited submission review processes. Eleanor, once if once you do have to have a competition, for one of these limited submissions? What does your review process look like? What kind of questions do you ask? Is it multiple stages? All that kind of stuff.
So it's typically just one stage. I try to tailor the questions that we ask the reviewers to whatever the opportunity is. I'll typically look at, if it's an NSF opportunity, for example, I'll go through and look at whatever the solicitation specific review criteria are in addition to the standard NSF criteria. If it's NIH, same type of thing. We'll look at not that there are more limited submissions that are kind of NIH prep type programs, but still we'll look at what's the significance and innovation, that kind of thing. And so I tailor the questions that I'm asking to whatever I can deduce the program goals are from the original solicitation. I try to keep it to 5 or fewer questions just to save the reviewers time. Sometimes we'll ask for I always ask for a few strengths of the proposal and a few weaknesses of the proposal, plus again sometimes other solicitation specific questions. And then I will typically ask for a numerical ranking of that proposal relative to the others that they've read, so that they're telling me this one was the strongest, this one was the intermediate, this one was the weakest, so that then we can go through and look at all of those reviews together, because it's pretty challenging to kind of rank if people are just giving you, qualitative feedback is obviously the richest and has the most depth and is the most informative, but it's pretty difficult to compare people's comments across different proposals because every reviewer has different personality and different style and different considerations. So we do always ask for that ranking. And I'll say that the form designer, one of the primary reasons that I now use the form designer pretty exclusively is that it gave us so much flexibility in terms of building the review template, because it allows me to build a different template or a customized template for each opportunity versus just using the comments and ratings for every question.
No, lots more flexibility in building a review form that fits the process better.
Yeah.
And so to drill into something you said, you have a ranking scale, not a rating scale. So you're not rating on criteria necessarily. You're ranking on.
Sometimes it's both. So, again, depending on what the solicit, I'm probably making this more complicated on myself than is really necessary. But sometimes I will have a numerical rating in addition to, strongest, weakest, especially if sometimes we have competitions for which we get so many pre-proposals that I need to have that I can't ask every reviewer to read them all. Like, the people who are our reviewer pool are typically our associate deans for research, senior faculty members who have experience running center scale programs, for example, or other faculty members or administrators with agency experience in particular. And so these people are very busy, and I can't. I feel like I can't email them and say, "Hello, can you please read these 8 pre-proposals?" And so I have to divide them up. And in those cases, especially, I will often use a quantity in addition to the qualitative comments, because those are most useful for the proposers. I will often have quantitative ratings on a scale of 1 to 5, or if it's more NIH oriented, 1 to 9 or whatever. And then a ranking. And then I just try to kind of combine everything in whatever the most objective way seems to be. So I would say always rankings, sometimes ratings, depending on the opportunity and the level of interest.
Balancing the needs of all the stakeholders and having the most effective process at the same time. Yeah. Kudos on all the hard work you're putting into that. Althea, could you share a little bit more about the review process for your limited submissions? Although I know you're not the primary limited submission person.
Yeah, so we basically do the same thing that Eleanor's talking about, although we do have both rating criteria on all of our limited submissions, and we have the strengths and weaknesses areas as well. And then when we have internal faculty awards, so the review process there is a little bit different. We do use rating criteria for that, but then because it's not all just about numbers for an award, and so we get the numbers and then we hold a 1 hour panel review, virtually with all of the reviewers. And typically they don't end up being the ones who rated number wise, because of that panel discussion. But our process is very, very similar to Eleanor's for limited submissions.
That panel discussion, do you have a routing step for that, or is it occurring completely outside of InfoReady?
So it's occurring like in Zoom, but I don't have a routing step for it. What I have to do is I have to so here's where my biggest challenge with InfoReady is, right? So we have to download the reports from the reviews. And when you download those reports, it's much better in the last year. There's been a lot of changes in the reports, but I have to manually still take some of that information because I need to be able to say it was this applicant, and here's the 3 reviewers' comments for each criteria, and here is their overall strengths and weaknesses comment. And then I just need that in a simple spreadsheet for them. So currently, I'm kind of manually doing that. And I see there's some changes, so I think I might not have to do as much manual process, but my goal is to then this year take some of that manual process and put it into ChatGPT and try to teach ChatGPT how to pull this information out of the downloaded reports that I get for the reviews and in the progress report section. That one's huge, and hopefully it will do some of that manual process for me. So if I had a goal, it would be that we would get a form designer type process that we could tailor for reports to individual competitions.
That's exciting, combining different technologies to get something really tailored like that. I might follow up with you to talk offline about the committee steps that we have that help put together that committee packet with all of the reviewer feedback
Sure.
per application, just to see if how that can fit for you. Sydney, I want to switch topics and come to you because we've been dancing around the reviewers. And I'm going to ask everyone, but I want to start with you. Um, how do you recruit and manage your reviewers for these opportunities?
So for our pilot program opportunities, we have a set scientific review committee, and we usually look to assign reviewers within that committee based on their expertise in the topic of the different grants. So I want to say we have like 20 to 25 members, and we usually have been getting about 20 applications. We attempt to assign 3 reviewers per application, so everyone's, reviewing 2 to 3. And as far as asking, we usually ask them via email, list out their applications, and then once they agree, I will add them in the InfoReady system so they have access to their reviews. But that's a system that's worked well for us, and also ensures that the reviewers know that the ask is coming directly from me. They can see it, and then I can communicate that with them. And then it's important for us, we just always make sure that in our notifications we set up to send to reviewers, that includes instructions on how to access InfoReady if they've not used it before, or, usually it's 6 months in between when they're doing these reviews. And if they're not in the system very frequently, they can forget. And also we include information about our review criteria. So we typically use the NIH Simplified Review Framework. And we just make sure that everyone is aware of that and how we're asking them to score and on what, or it's not coming to me, what, I can't think of it, what we're asking them to score on. So there's different like categories. I think I answered your question. I'm not sure.
You answered the question. You gave a lot
Okay.
of other good information too. 'Cause I know that recruiting reviewers, managing a reviewer pool, and making sure they're feeling comfortable with the process and actually doing the reviews. It's all
Mhm.
important, and it's a big part of the process. Um, Eleanor, how are you? How do you recruit reviewers and get them to assign them and get them to finish their reviews?
I mean, I will say that I'm very lucky with my reviewers. I hardly ever have to hound anybody to submit their reviews. So I think I just happen to be very fortunate to work with a bunch of extremely conscientious people. To recruit them, it's just a matter of me sending a personal email, and I try to, like I said, we're pulling from a pool of ADRs and a couple, and a few other senior faculty members and administrators, and so I do tend to be asking the same people more than once over the course of a year. And so I'm trying to look at, what are the range of opportunities that I have coming up? What do I know I'm probably going to have later in the year? Um, do I want to ask for a favor from this person now for this opportunity, or am I going to need a bigger favor from them, later for a different program based on whatever their experience or expertise is? So yeah, so it's just a matter of me sending them an email. I try to do that well in advance because everybody's really busy and they need, plenty of notice. I tell them what all the dates are. I tell them how long the pre-proposals are going to be, so they don't, so that they know whether they're on the hook for reading a 2-page, 6 2-page documents or 3 10-page. They're never 10 pages, but so they have a sense for what they're going to be on the hook for and when it'll need to be done. And most people are very nice and do say yes and do a fantastic job. So I really can't complain at all.
That's great to hear. One thing one piece of feedback we've gotten over the years is that using InfoReady has led to higher completion rates on assigned reviews. Um, and it sounds like you've never had that problem, Eleanor. Um, but joking aside, it's wonderful to hear that you have conscientious colleagues and reviewers on campus.
I will say I do think that InfoReady probably helps because it does send the reminder emails like, oh, you have this due. And I think also it's just a generally, prior to using InfoReady, the reviews were entirely managed manually and via email. And so I think that having a template and a form that they can just fill out and knowing what it's going to look like, I do think that it lowers the barrier. It both lowers the barrier and makes it seem more official, both of which I think help nudge people towards completing the reviews. So I would say it definitely is. It definitely has been helpful.
Oh, great. Thanks for the added tidbit there. And Althea, you do anything special to recruit and manage your reviewers, or is it just like a bunch of the same from
So the only thing we do is that might be a little different is we tailor the reviews to who the applicants are. So like we make sure that our committee is interdisciplinary so that so that we capture that in the review. Like we don't just all have STEM reviewers, for something. But pretty much it's done the same way, how they're talking, and it's just by email and we request. And I've only in the 8 years I've been doing the limited submissions before this last year, only one reviewer has ever ghosted me completely. And so I feel like that's pretty good, right? It's only one. So, but I don't have as great a success as Eleanor. So it would be, I feel like InfoReady though has helped us a ton because so many of the reviewers say this is so much easier than that Excel spreadsheet used to send me. And for some reason, some people had a hard time filling out an Excel spreadsheet. So that took that barrier away and it's just much easier. So
well, that's great to hear. We hear Excel spreadsheet where the admin has to curate a Dropbox folder with all of the different pieces of application material and then manage the permissions for each one. And it's nice not having to do that for sure. Sticking with you, Althea. Um, let's talk about communicating out the decisions on awards and limited submissions. How are you doing that?
So we use InfoReady for that. So we send our awards and our rejection letters, inside of the notifications area. And that's also how we notify OSP of who's been selected for a limited submission. So we CC, we across campus, we have department and college pre-award administrators. And then the OSP pre-award research administrator also gets CC'd. And so all the notifications are in there so that we're really trying to automate that process so that, if someone does leave, like we don't lose that longevity of how that's done. And so we just notify them and that we do have Cayuse, But at this point, our limited submissions are so few that we are not integrated into Cayuse. I know that was one of the questions that had come through before. And so we are not integrated into Cayuse just because it would just be a handful for us at this point. If that grew in the future, maybe we would integrate with Cayuse. We're only integrated with Pivot right now. So
Right. And just a quick note for everyone. InfoReady has an API that connects to Cayuse and will send information on all the awarded, it's awarded in quotes, limited submissions, to Cayuse for proposal development. In case anyone had wanted to know more about that, feel free to send us an email. Sydney, so you're doing internal funding opportunities. Can you tell us a little bit more about communicating out award decisions?
Yeah, so for our program, we do communicate out the award decisions via email. But I know that there are some groups who do it through InfoReady. I think it kind of just depends on a lot of the groups who have started using InfoReady recently are using more of these the different notification systems. We are working on in my program transitioning to automate more of this stuff right now. But we're making small changes because we want to make sure that people are kind of getting used to how things are changing since a lot of the folks who work on this program have been with it for a really long time. But we do those notifications through InfoReady. One of the things we do like to do though is download the reviews, anonymized reviews, and then send them, and we include those as PDFs on the email. So that's been really helpful that InfoReady can just compile all of those for us and we can get those sent out to our applicants.
Right. Yeah, no, it's so important to be able to communicate all the different parts of the material on the award decision. Like it's the decision, it's additional feedback, it's the next steps, it's whether there's a reporting component to it sometime in the future. So being able to control that and managing and be clear about it can save you a lot of trouble. Um, Eleanor, anything to add on communicating decisions?
No, I don't think so. I think everybody's covered it really nicely.
Right. Thanks so much. Now, I have many, many questions that have been submitted via Q&A. The first one I'm going to take actually. And the question is, does InfoReady have an API that integrates with Pivot? So Althea mentioned Pivot, and I saw you just nod, Eleanor. So we actually do have a integration with Pivot. We set it up admin to admin. Sorry, it's a per admin setup. All you have to do is contact our support team, and if you have an admin account in Pivot and an admin account in InfoReady, it takes 1 or 2 business days, and then you're set up. And when you're in Pivot, you find the opportunity. There's a button that says push to InfoReady, and it pushes the data. You can select which template you want to put that data in about the opportunity, and then you can just do whatever you need to do to launch it, promote it, whatever you want. Pretty saves a lot of time, that's for sure. Okay, here's another question. I'm going to ask both Althea and Eleanor. This is a limited submission question. How many limited submission competitions do you run each year? And then also, which ones do you choose to advertise? So, Eleanor, how many do you run each year? Which ones do you choose to advertise?
That's a great question. I mean, it varies by year. The number of competitions is usually somewhere around 8 to 15. There have been fewer in the last year, just because there have been fewer solicitations in general. Most of the competitions we post are for federal funding, although there are a number of foundation ones. I would say we post many more opportunities than that. Most of them we end up not having to compete because we only have one, we only have 1 or 2 people interested. I would say that I choose to post competitions that I think will have a reasonably broad appeal. Just because we're such a big university and I'm only one person, I often don't post competitions that are so discipline specific that I think that anybody who's interested in that opportunity probably already knows about it because they've subscribed to the funding opportunity for that organization. And so I will occasionally get emails from people saying, "Hey, I'm interested in this one. I see that it's a limited submission, but it's not posted. What do I do?" And in that case, we generally award those depending on depending on the date. We'll sometimes award them on a first come first serve basis. So it's just a matter of trying to balance, not spamming people with a bunch of competition information that's not relevant to them, with making sure that we are posting everything and giving people enough advance notice on the things where we think we are likely to get broader interest.
Great, thanks so much. Althea, volume of limited submissions.
So it's probably similar. Like I think maybe on a typical year, this last year was not typical, but we probably just announced maybe 35. I mean, it's very small for us. And then maybe 5 to 10 of those we have to go to pre-proposals. But so our focus is, more trying, like Eleanor said, to focus on the ones that we think faculty are going to apply. One of the things we're hoping to do this year, Habran, is planning to somehow try to engage with the humanities and social sciences more because we typically are not getting them. We have been putting out limited submissions, but we just don't get any response. And so we're probably going to go he'll do a road show and he will go to the monthly college department meetings and, try to encourage those groups that we're not seeing engagement from, try to encourage them to submit to limited submissions. So.
Great, thanks so much. The road show I've heard before, right? Trying to get the word out in different ways. It's a higher touch, definitely takes more effort. So here's one. I don't know if any of you will say yes to this. Question is, could InfoReady be used for sabbatical processes where there are multiple approval levels? Have any of you thought about or encountered that? We do have some institutions we work with that are doing sabbatical and reassign time type of stuff. So that person, we can follow up with you to give you more information. Thea, you mentioned a newsletter feature. And there's lots of ears perked up when you said newsletter feature. And so I wanted to come back around to that. There's lots of +1s, thumbs up on that question that came in. So you said you aren't using it, but I can share a little bit more with the folks on what a newsletter feature might be. Each opportunity, each competition has a share button. And in that share button, you're able to auto-populate the details page there. You're able to customize the text as well, and then choose to share that opportunity with individuals, with the listserv. All you have to do is put in the email address. Now, we do have a more advanced option. If you have some sort of inbound data feed integration with us, we'll have way more data, and you'd be able to filter the audience by department or discipline or whatever else you send to us, and then you'd be able to share out to a targeted audience. And that's per opportunity. Here's another question. This one I think is more for the people managing not limited submissions, by the way. Do you have any opportunities where you allow external applicants to submit proposals? Sydney?
Yeah, we do. It does depend on the grant opportunity. I know our community engagement group has a grant opportunity that allows anyone from any South Carolina institution to apply. And then we've recently run a collaborative grant with the University of Florida. When we do that, I typically am still, especially the one with UF, I am the administrator for that grant. I work with I'm still the primary point of contact for InfoReady, and we just are sure to make sure that the domain names are configured within our system so that those folks can apply and get in, which you can find on your admin page. So I've done that quite a bit. And then also, I just can help field questions for folks. And then usually we have had no issue setting up external reviewers for some of these grants. So it works, to my knowledge, pretty seamlessly. But it just depends on the grant that we have and what its parameters and requirements are for PIs.
Great, thanks so much for that. Man, you can choose a lockdown InfoReady or open it up in different ways and in targeted ways. Uh, when there's collaborations between multiple institutions, definitely you can do that in InfoReady. One of the registration questions was targeted to Virginia Tech and UNLV, and the question is, how do you separate your medical school or health sciences schools from your non-health programs when you're managing opportunities? And specifically, um, for times when they have different institutional limitations. So I'm assuming this is more limited submission. And how do you manage and differentiate the distinctions in InfoReady? Althea, you first.
So we're currently not differentiating them, but because we have, just the 35, right? So few. But if we are to scale up at some point our limited submissions and we wanted to differentiate those, we have a gold license. And so that would allow us to create a microsite. And that's how we would differentiate them. So like everything would be on the home page, but then in the drop-down microsite area, they could just select what was for the School of Medicine. So I mean, we have that option if we decide to go that route in the future.
Right. Eleanor.
Yeah, I would say we also don't. The research administration for the medical school and for the our main campus is pretty distinct, and so we don't manage the limited submissions for the medical school, and we don't post opportunities that are obviously for physicians. Or that would only be appropriate for the medical school. And we so far, fingers crossed, have not run into an opportunity where where somebody from the medical school and someone from the main campus has submitted and it's gotten kicked back by the sponsor. So we've been lucky to be able to keep them totally segregated so far.
Crossing my fingers for you.
Yeah, thanks.
You don't want all those problems on your desk. Okay, so we're close to time here. One last question for each of you. One tip. I'm looking for one tip, one concise tip for the audience on a best practice in InfoReady. To you, Sydney.
Mine is use the preview function on Form Designer. It is your best friend when you are, I didn't realize this at first, you can enter information and test every part of that form to make sure it works and make sure all your logic works. So I just recommend that before you launch anything.
Althea?
So my tip would be set up templates. That saves so much time, and that has saved us internal faculty awards, limited submissions. We have templates for all of those different programs, and I can't just stress how much time that saves.
Right. And it also standardizes the fields and the data you collect, right? If you have that
Yeah.
standardized data, you can report that up. You can get aggregate data across multiple years or the type of programs. Very helpful. Um, Eleanor.
I strongly second both of those tips. I use both of those also. The other thing I would say, I'm sure everybody is already doing this, but now that we're starting our second year of having InfoReady, the copy opportunity feature has saved me a ton of time. Because many of these competitions are recurring every year, and so obviously, I update dates and things like that. But just being able to copy and paste the details that don't change, that are consistent, has been fantastic versus having to reinvent the wheel every time.
Great, thanks. Yeah, what I hear a lot here is reducing the administrative burden on yourselves. On top of that, it goes back to a theme all of you mentioned, which was make it repeatable and less reliant on individuals, right? You're putting this in the system so there's staff transition or anything like that. Uh, the knowledge doesn't stop when you win the lottery and leave. I'm hoping all of you win the lottery, by the way. Um, so uh, we've come to the end of our time. I've got a couple slides, and then we'll close things out. So our next Peer Spotlight webinar is March 19th. University of Memphis is going to be sharing some tips on research development, and this is in collaboration with NordUp. So any NordUp members probably see this announcement as well. And then and if you have any interest in other InfoReady webinars, go to that link. We host training webinars all the time. In fact, we've got one on March 5th with advanced tips on using the form designer. Lots of good stuff there. I will not be the host. I'll be managing the Q&A. And then next slide, you'll see if you have any questions about using InfoReady, if you're not a current InfoReady user, contact my colleague Max Steinerman. If you are using InfoReady right now and you just want to troubleshoot or think things through on how to set up something, anything like that, or maybe you heard about the Cayuse API and you want to talk more about that, contact myself. You can contact support. We'd be happy to help. And with that, I want to thank our wonderful panelists today. You were wonderful. Thanks for sharing your knowledge. And I want to thank everyone who attended the webinar. Thank you for your time. With that, everyone have a great day. Good rest of your week. Thank you. Bye.